My name is Maya Torres, and I am 34 years old. The day my parents escorted me out of their Scottsdale estate with one suitcase and a check for $500, they told everyone I had gone to study fashion design in New York. The truth was simpler and uglier. I had married a man they considered beneath us, and they had chosen their reputation over their daughter. Today, they were standing in the lobby of Harrington's, the most celebrated restaurant in the Southwest, demanding a table at my daughter's Michelin star ceremony, the granddaughter they had never once held. My mother's emerald earrings caught the chandelier light. My father adjusted his Rolex with the same measured calm he used when he had handed me that check 11 years ago. They had no idea what was waiting for them inside. Before I tell you what happened next, let me take you back to where this story really begins. I grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, in a house with a circular driveway, a swimming pool nobody used, and parents who treated respectability like a religion. My father, Robert Torres, had built Torres luxury properties from a single strip mall into a real estate empire that dressed him in Italian suits and put the family name on the side of 2 buildings downtown. My mother, Patricia, ran their social life the way a general runs a campaign, with strategy, precision, and zero tolerance for casualties. I was their only child, which meant I was also their entire investment portfolio. I met Daniel Webb at 22 at a birthday party for a college friend. He was a line cook at the time, laughing too loud, wearing a flannel shirt in a room full of blazers. He had warm eyes and flour on his wrist that he had missed washing off. Within 6 months, I knew I was going to marry him. Within 8 months, I knew telling my parents would be the hardest thing I had ever done. I chose a Sunday dinner. My mother had made her careful arrangements, the good china, the flowers from the garden, the kind of setting that said this family is fine, this family is composed. I waited until the salad course. I told them I was engaged. I told them his name. I told them what he did for a living. My father set down his fork with the precision of a man who had rehearsed this response in his head for years, as if he had always known this moment would come. "A cook," he said, not a question. My mother reached for her wine and did not put it down for a long time. What followed was not a yelling match. My parents did not yell. What they did was worse. They reasoned with me, calmly and thoroughly, the way you reason with someone who has made a financial error. They talked about image. They talked about the family name. They talked about what the Hendersons would think, and the Garcias, and everyone at First Presbyterian. They talked about my future as though Daniel were a weather system that would pass if I waited long enough. I did not wait. We married 4 months later at the Maricopa County Courthouse with his mother and my best friend Elena as witnesses. I wore a yellow dress I had bought for $60. We had dinner at the restaurant where Daniel worked, and a corner booze after his shift, and his chef came out to cook for us personally. It was the best meal of my life. My parents' response arrived by certified mail 3 days after they heard. The letter was written on Torres Luxury Properties letterhead, reviewed by their attorney. It was thorough. It informed me that I had chosen my path against the explicit counsel of my family, that they wished me no harm but could not in good conscience maintain a relationship that endorsed this decision, and that any financial support, including the trust account my grandfather had set up for me, was being rerouted pending a family restructuring. I read it twice. Then I folded it and put it in the kitchen drawer, because I did not yet know it would become the most important piece of paper in my life. We had $43 in our joint account the day I moved into Daniel's apartment. It had one window that faced a parking structure, a mattress on the floor, and a hot plate because the stove had a broken burner. I loved it with everything I had. Daniel worked doubles. I took a job managing reservations at a mid-range hotel downtown. We ate at the restaurant where he worked on his days off. Staff meal at the long table in the back, and I started learning the rhythm of a kitchen. The heat, the noise, the language. The way a good chef moves through a room like they own every inch of it. I started asking questions. I started taking notes in a small spiral notebook I kept in my apron pocket. The woman who changed everything was named Ruth Calloway. She was 68 years old, recently widowed. and the former owner of a place called Callaway's Grill that had operated for 30 years on the east side before her husband's health had forced them to close it. She came into the hotel one afternoon to inquire about event space and ended up sitting at the lobby bar for 2 hours while I answered her questions about the catering options. At some point, the conversation shifted, the way conversations do when two people are actually listening to each other. "You're not really a hotel person," she said, not unkindly. "No," I said. "What are you?" I told her about the notebook, about the menus I wrote out for restaurants that did not exist yet, about the food festivals I had attended on weekends, the culinary podcasts I fell asleep to, the way I had started running the numbers on what a small neighborhood bistro would need to break even in its first year. She looked at me for a long moment. "My husband and I never had children," she said. "The restaurant was our child. Closing it nearly killed me. I have a space sitting empty on 5th Street and more money than I know what to do with and nobody to do anything with it." I thought she was making conversation. She was not. Ruth Callaway became my business partner, my mentor, and the closest thing to a mother I had during those years. She put up the capital. I put up everything else. 80-hour weeks. Every idea in the notebook. Every calculation I had run in my head for 3 years. Daniel left his job to become our head chef. We opened Mesa, a 40-seat new American restaurant on 5th Street, in the spring of the year our daughter Lily was born. Lily arrived 6 weeks before opening night, screaming and perfect, and Ruth was in the delivery room because I asked her to be. She cut the cord. She held my daughter before I'd finished being stitched up, and she said, "This one is going to be extraordinary. I can already tell." She was not wrong. We were not an overnight success. The first year was brutal. There were months when Daniel and I paid our staff before we paid our mortgage. There were nights I sat in the empty dining room at midnight, running numbers that did not add up, calling Ruth, who always answered. She would talk me through it. She had a way of making a crisis feel like a curriculum. By year 3, we had a waiting list on weekends. By year 5, a food critic from Phoenix magazine called Mesa the most quietly ambitious restaurant in the state. By year 7, Daniel had been nominated for a James Beard Award, and by year 8, the year Lily turned 8 herself, the Michelin inspector visited twice, and we did not know until the call came. I was doing inventory in the dry storage when my phone rang. I answered it sitting on a box of arborio rice. I cried so hard Daniel thought something had happened to Lily. We were in the paper the next morning. The photograph was of Daniel and me and Lily standing in the kitchen, all 3 of us in our whites. My daughter had insisted on wearing her own small apron. The article mentioned my name, Maya Torres Webb, and the restaurant and the street and the city and the story of 2 young people who had started with $43 and a broken stove burner. My mother saw it before noon. The voicemail came that same afternoon, to my personal cell, a number I had never given them. I do not know how they got it. Her voice was careful and composed, the voice she used for people she needed something from. She said that she and my father had seen the wonderful news, that they were so proud, that it was past time for the family to come together, and that she hoped I would call her back. I stood in the walk-in cooler holding my phone for a long time. The cold felt appropriate. I did not call back. The emails came next, to the restaurant's public address, carbon copied to their attorney. Professional. Measured. They expressed a grandparental desire to establish a relationship with Lily. They referenced, gently, the concept of family legacy. They signed it with the Torres family crest that my father had designed himself and had printed on everything. My husband found me reading the 3rd one at the office desk and washed my face while I did it. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "Not yet." "Then we wait," he said, and went back to the kitchen, because Daniel Webb had always understood that some things require patience and the right moment and extremely sharp knives. Ruth was the one who told me to start documenting. She said it quietly over coffee one morning, the way she said everything important, without drama, without performance, just the plain truth laid flat on the table. "Keep everything," she said. "Every voicemail, every email, every letter. Your parents did not come back because they love you. They came back because your name is in the paper, and their name is attached to yours whether they like it or not. She was right. They started appearing. A reservation at Mesa under a variation of my mother's maiden name, 2 people at a corner table requesting to be seated in my section. I recognized my father's profile before I recognized his face, the particular set of his shoulders, the way he positioned himself in a room to be seen. I brought water to their table myself. My mother looked older and precisely the same, the way money preserves and petrifies simultaneously. We need to speak with you, my father said. You should have made a reservation under your real name, I said. We have a 6-week wait and I would have personally ensured you did not get a table. I asked them to leave. They did, eventually, after my floor manager made it clear that the alternative involved the non-emergency police line. They left a note with the hostess. It said they hoped I would reconsider, for Lily's sake. For Lily, who they had never met. Lily, who was 9 years old and had grown up believing Ruth was her grandmother because Ruth was there every Sunday, every birthday, every school play, every nightmare, every morning when Lily crawled into her lap and asked her to read something out loud. The gifts came next. A savings bond mailed to the restaurant addressed to Lily Torres Webb. A handwritten note that called her our granddaughter in the possessive, as if possession required no prior presence. Daniel intercepted a second envelope at the door and put it directly in the folder we had started keeping. Our attorney, a woman named Claire Park who had the kind of calm that suggested she had seen every version of this story before, told us the documentation would matter. For what? I asked. She looked at me the way Ruth looked at me sometimes, with the patience of someone who already knows the answer and is waiting for you to arrive at it yourself. For whenever this becomes what it's actually going to become, she said. It became that on a Tuesday in October. My mother approached Lily outside her school. Lily was standing on the sidewalk waiting for Daniel, wearing her backpack, eating a granola bar. A woman she had never seen approached her and said, "You must be Lily. I'm your grandmother." Lily called Daniel immediately, the way we had taught her to call us whenever an adult she did not know tried to speak to her alone. She was calm about it in a way that made me simultaneously proud and furious. "Dad, a woman said she was my grandmother. Is that true?" "Go wait inside the school office," Daniel said. "I'll be there in 4 minutes." He was there in 3. Claire filed the harassment documentation that evening. When I called Ruth to tell her, she was quiet for a long time. "They approached Lily," she said finally. "Yes." Another silence. "Then we're done waiting." Ruth had been updating her estate documents every year since we had opened Mesa together. I knew this because she had told me, and because Claire had been her attorney for a decade before she became mine. What I did not know until that October was the specific language Ruth had added 7 years earlier, after Lily was born. After she had watched my parents' absence calcify from choice into pattern. Ruth called me to her house on a Wednesday afternoon. She made chamomile tea. She sat across from me at the kitchen table where I had sat 100 times, the table where she had talked me through every crisis and every milestone, and she told me that she had a video she wanted me to see. She had recorded it 2 years earlier, during a period when her health had given her a scare that turned out to be temporary, but had clarified certain things for her. She played it on her laptop, turned toward me. She was sitting in this same kitchen in this same chair. She looked directly at the camera. "Maya," she said, "if you're watching this and Robert and Patricia Torres have remembered they have a daughter, I want you to know that I have planned for this with the same attention I gave everything else that mattered to me." She paused. On the screen and in the chair across from me, she looked like exactly who she was, a woman who had decided, deliberately and without sentimentality, what kind of love she was capable of, and then delivered it without reservation. "I know who your parents are," she continued. "I looked into them the month after we opened Mesa. I know about the letter they sent. I know about the trust account they redirected. I know about the certified mail on company letterhead." She looked straight into the camera. "Robert and Patricia Torres. Hello. I've been waiting." My throat tightened. Ruth reached across the table and held my hand while her own image continued speaking. "I have left everything to my real family," she said on the screen. "My shares in Mesa, The Fifth Street property, the Callaway family home, the investment portfolio. It amounts to just over $2 million and the best restaurant in the state, and it goes to Maya Torres Webb and her daughter Lily. There is a specific provision, reviewed by 3 separate attorneys and tested against Arizona's state law, that permanently bars any individual who abandoned, rejected, or refused relationship with Maya Torres Webb during the period of her financial and personal vulnerability from any claim, financial benefit, or inheritance interest in this estate. This provision has no expiration. It does not care about changed minds or public reconciliation or convenient timing. It cares about what you did when it was hard. She paused one more time. I'm giving you the same thing you gave Maya when she needed you most, she said. Nothing. The recording ended. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside the window, Ruth's lemon tree was dropping fruit into the grass. Are you all right? Ruth asked. You knew they would come back, I said. I knew the newspaper would bring them. I knew the Michelin star would bring them faster. She wrapped both hands around her mug. I have had 11 years to love your daughter and watch you build something real. I was not going to let them near it. Claire had the documents ready within the week. The plan was simple, in the way that plans are simple when they have been prepared with adequate time and the right materials. The Michelin ceremony was in 3 weeks, a formal dinner at Harrington's, the historic venue downtown, attended by the culinary community, city leadership, several food journalists, and approximately 200 people who knew exactly who Mesa was and how it had gotten there. I was giving a speech. Ruth was to be recognized as founding partner. I wrote 3 invitations by hand. The first 2 went to my parents. They read, Dear Mom and Dad, please join us at the Michelin recognition ceremony at Harrington's on the 14th. Ruth Callaway will be presenting documentation relevant to the Torres family estate matter. We look forward to seeing you. Maya. The third went to my parents' attorney, with a copy to Claire, flagged as formal notice. They'll think you're ready to negotiate, Claire said, reading the invitation over. Let them, I said. They RSVP'd within 2 hours. My father's assistant called the venue directly to request preferred seating. I had them placed at the center table, front row, directly beneath the overhead lighting, with a clear line of sight to the podium. I wanted them to be seen. The night of the ceremony I dressed Lily in her blue velvet dress and let her choose which shoes. She chose the red ones, which did not match, and I did not say a word because Ruth would have approved. Daniel wore the suit he had bought for the James Beard ceremony. Ruth wore the same deep green dress she had worn to every important occasion for as long as I had known her, because she had decided years ago that when something fit and felt right you should simply keep wearing it. My parents were already seated when we arrived. My mother had changed outfits. I could tell by the crease lines, too fresh for something worn all evening. She had planned for photographs. My father was working the room before the program began, speaking to people he recognized from their donor lists, reintroducing himself in a way that casually included phrases like, our daughter's restaurant. The program opened. Several speakers. Ruth was introduced and received a standing ovation from a room full of people who had watched Mesa grow from a 40-seat gamble into something the whole city was proud of. She stood at the podium and looked out at the room with the calm of someone who knew exactly what was coming. I want to say something about family tonight, she said, because Mesa is, more than anything, a family story. She told it plainly. Not with drama, not with cruelty, but with the precision of someone who had lived a long life and understood that truth was better delivered clearly than decorated. She told the room about a 23-year-old woman who had come to her with a notebook full of ideas and $43 and a marriage her parents had refused to attend. She talked about what it meant to choose someone. She talked about 11 years of Sunday dinners in school plays and the particular joy of watching someone you love build something real. She did not say my parents' names. She did not need to. The room knew I had parents. The room could see where the center table was. Then she turned to the screen. Her video played in full. 200 people watched Ruth Callaway speak directly to the 2 people at the center table. My mother's composure cracked at the word nothing. Not with tears. My mother did not cry in public, but with a stillness that was its own kind of collapse. My father's jaw was a fixed line, he was calculating. I could see it from across the room. The rapid interior accounting of a man reassessing a transaction he thought he had understood. When the video ended, the room was silent for a long moment. Then Daniel led the applause, and it spread. And it was not the polite applause of obligation, but the sustained kind that means something real has just happened in front of people, and they know it. My father stood. In the 11 years since I had last been in the same room as my parents, I had imagined this moment in many forms. But I had not imagined him standing in a room of 200 people and saying, loudly, "This is a family matter, and it is being misrepresented." Every phone in the room came up. I watched it happen in real time, a slow wave of recording. My mother put a hand on his arm. He pulled it free. "That woman had no right to speak about our family," he said, addressing the room now, the way he addressed county commission meetings and donor luncheons, with the authority of someone accustomed to being the most important person speaking. "Our daughter made choices we disagreed with. We responded the way any family would. We are here tonight to repair that relationship for our granddaughter's sake." "She doesn't know you," Lily said. The room went very quiet. My daughter was standing 4 feet from the podium in her blue dress and her red shoes, 9 years old, looking at my father with the clear, steady gaze she had inherited from nobody in his family. "Grandma Ruth comes to my school plays," Lily said. "She taught me to make biscuits. She was there when I had my tonsils out. I don't know who you are." I had not asked her to say this. I had not coached her. I had raised a child who had grown up surrounded by the kind of love that makes a person steady, and she was simply being steady. Daniel moved to stand beside her. I moved to her other side. Claire stepped to the microphone that had been vacated by the previous speaker. She was carrying a folder, and she opened it with the unhurried manner of someone presenting evidence rather than winning an argument, because there is a difference. "Mr. and Mrs. Torres," she said. "I represent Maya Torres Webb, Ruth Calloway, and the Mesa Restaurant Group. In your hand you'll find copies of documents you may recognize." She nodded to her assistant, who delivered envelopes to each of them at the table. "The first is the letter you sent Maya 11 years ago on Torres Luxury Properties letterhead. The second is the documentation of 17 separate contact attempts made to Maya, her husband, and her minor child since the date of the Michelin announcement, a period of 22 days. The third is Ruth Calloway's estate provision, certified and probated, along with the legal opinion from 3 independent attorneys confirming its validity under Arizona law." She turned a page. "Should contact continue after tonight, we will file for a civil harassment restraining order and pursue damages under Arizona's harassment statutes. The documentation we have compiled over the past 3 weeks, including the unauthorized approach of your granddaughter outside her school, is sufficient for injunctive relief. I would encourage you to consult your own attorney before the close of business tomorrow." She closed the folder. "You have the same amount of time Ruth mentioned," she said, "before the dessert course is served." My mother gathered her bag. My father remained seated for 30 seconds longer than was comfortable for everyone watching, performing deliberation for a room that had already decided. Then he stood, adjusted his jacket, and walked toward the exit with the bearing of a man who had not just lost anything. My mother followed. She did not look at me. She did not look at me. She did not look at Lily. At the door, she paused. I thought she might turn. I thought she might say something that would complicate the clean line of what had just happened, something I would have to carry with me. But she only put her sunglasses on, inside in the evening, because my mother had always believed that if you looked prepared you could not be caught unprepared, and walked out. The applause began again before the doors had fully closed. Ruth found me in the hallway afterward, and I was crying, which surprised me because I had not expected to cry. She did not ask me if I was all right. She put her arms around me and held on, the way she had on every occasion that had ever mattered, with the particular steadiness of someone who has decided that you are worth showing up for, and has never once reconsidered that decision. "It's done," she said. "It's done," she said. The months that followed were quieter than I expected. My parents retained a new attorney and made one formal inquiry about contesting Ruth's estate provision. Claire responded with the complete documentation file. No further action was taken. Torres Luxury Properties announced a leadership transition 6 months later, my father stepping back from the CEO role, a decision framed in the press release as planned succession. I read it over coffee one morning and felt, with some surprise, almost nothing. Daniel won the James Beard Award the following spring. We closed Mesa for the night, took the whole staff to a rooftop bar, and Ruth gave a toast that made everyone cry, including the two line cooks who had insisted before dinner that they never cried. Lily fell asleep on a banquet at 10 o'clock with her head on Ruth's lap, and Ruth kept one hand on her hair for the rest of the evening and talked to everyone who came to the table. I watched them from across the room for a long time. My husband, my daughter, this woman who had chosen us so deliberately and completely. And I thought about what it costs to be the kind of person who shows up. Not the easy showing up, the birthdays and the celebrations, but the 2 a.m. phone calls and the co-signed leases and the sitting on a park bench in the cold because someone needed to be told they mattered. Ruth had paid that cost without complaint for 11 years. She had paid it in advance, in a document she had drawn up when she was healthy and clear-eyed, because she had looked at our life and decided it was worth protecting. My parents were living in their Scottsdale estate, hosting the same dinners, attending the same events, carrying the same name. I did not wish them harm. I did not wish them anything in particular. They existed at a distance, behind glass, visible and irrelevant, the way things look when you have moved far enough away from them. On Lily's 10th birthday, she asked if she could have a cooking lesson with Daniel and Ruth together in our kitchen. We cleared the afternoon. Ruth brought the biscuit recipe she had been teaching Lily since she was 4, handwritten on an index card in her large slanted handwriting, the same card every time, soft at the folds from use. Daniel put on the kitchen playlist. Lily stood on her step stool at the counter and directed the entire operation with the confidence of someone who has grown up knowing they are completely, unconditionally loved. At some point in the afternoon, I stood in the doorway watching the three of them, flour on all of their hands, Ruth laughing at something Lily had said, Daniel catching my eye over Lily's head with the look we had developed over 12 years of marriage, the one that meant, look at what we made. And I understood with complete clarity that this was not a consolation prize. This was not what I had settled for when the original plan fell through. This was the thing itself, the actual thing. Some families are chosen with the care and intention that other people reserve for the most permanent decisions of their lives. The people who choose you that way are rare. When you find them, you build everything around them, and you protect what you have built, and you do not apologize for it to anyone. If you have found your chosen family, comment home below, because that is what it is. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. You do not want to miss what's coming next. And if you are the person right now who has been told you are not worth staying for, someone is about to prove them wrong. It might even be you.